My name is Rhoda Bernard, and I am the Managing Director of the Berklee Institute for Arts Education and Special Needs. This weekend, we are hosting a conference. Started Friday night, all day today and all day tomorrow. Our Able Assembly, Arts Better the Lives of Everyone. It's a conference on arts education and special needs. So this, of course, was the perfect timing and the perfect venue for the presentation we're about to see this evening. If you have not watched the videos of our featured presenter, I encourage you to do so and to send them to everyone you know, because they are extraordinarily compelling. I have just met her, and I'm really excited about what she is going to share with all of us this evening. We want to make sure that cell phones are turned off. The presentation is, I believe, about 85 or 90 minutes, followed by a bit of a conversation and discussion. So please turn off your cell phones. The restrooms are in the lobby out towards the back. And please, a warm welcome to Nataly Zukerman.
Hello, good evening. So, as you heard by now, my name is Nataly Zukerman. In 1990, when I was 12, I had an accident. It's not a car accident. It's actually, I think it's quite a stupid accident. It was an accident in the Scouts. We went to a summer camp up in the north of Israel, and we built, in accordance with the annual issue that was the Israeli army, we built a tank from big logs of wood. And this was where we all slept. Now, it was Saturday morning, and I was sent to the kitchen to work. Now, the kitchen was really far away, and I was 12 and very little, and I was really afraid, because I was really afraid of people I didn't know. Even today, I'm a bit timid of people I don't know. So I lied. I said I had to bring something out of my bag. When I entered the tank, I heard, "Nataly, watch out!" And then the tank fell on me, or the structure of the tank. And I broke a vertebra in my back. I was paralyzed. I was hospitalized for about 6 months, and I had to learn to walk again. I walked with crutches until I was about 16. Even today, it still affects me. I limp, I can't run, I can't jump, and I can't climb the stairs without any help. Hi, my name is Nataly Zukerman. In 1990, when I was 12, I had an accident in the Scouts and I broke a vertebra in my back. At night, at the hospital, my mom asked Dr. Hanani, 1 meter, 90 centimeters, 6'2", if I would dance again. If she walks again, I will be pleased. I broke vertebra L1, that is located around here. It was broken completely and was thrown into the trash. It was replaced with a bone taken from here, my left pelvis. The vertebra above it got twisted and it had to be put back in its place. The surgeon tied two vertebrae together, the new and the old, and put two metal plates on both sides of my spines and left me with a scar. I had an x-ray a few years ago and they found out that one of my metal plates is broken. Hi, my name is Nataly Zukerman. In 1990, when I was 12, I had an accident in the Scouts and I broke a vertebra in my back. I was paralyzed. I was hospitalized for about 6 months and I had to learn to walk again. Now, I walked with crutches until I was about 16. Even today, it still affects me. I limp, I can't run, I can't jump, and I can't climb the stairs without any help. Today I'm 39, almost 40. And I graduated from Tel Aviv University, finishing my master's in performance. In one of the classes, I did a short piece. And Naama, my friend, she gave me some feedback after the show. She said, "You always choose deliberately action that emphasize your disability." hope it's okay, I'll just have to sit now because it's really hard for me to stand for a very long time. Can you hear me? Hi, my name is Nataly Zukerman. I think you all know that by now. And what you just saw was a part of a show called The Other Body. It was just like 10 minutes of an hour and 20-minute show. It's the beginning of the show. And in the last few years, that's what I've been doing. Made The Other Body show and another show called Practice Makes Perfect, which can be both be placed under the category of disability arts or artability, which is, I have to say, a non-existent category in Israel. We don't even have a name or a title for it, so we say it in English, actually, also in Israel. The only 81 people who talked about it. I've actually been in the theatre business since I was a child, but I only managed to find myself in center stage and make work about my disability only when I turned 34. And I want you to understand why. Because most of my friends found themselves at the center stage of their 20s, and it took me quite a long time to get there. So today I want to talk to you about my journey, about the difficulties and about my experiences, about the insights that I got through this process until the moment that I'm sitting in front of you and talking about it, until the moment that I actually managed to say I have a disability, and I own that term also as an artist but also as a human being. So, like any very good story, I would say, we'll start at the beginning. So I was born in 1978. I'm the eldest daughter out of 3 to Norit and David. Really nice childhood, very good childhood, you know, white house, picket fence, a dog, 3 cats, really normal childhood. And I loved singing and I loved dancing. That was my favorite thing. My aunt likes to tell the same story, that in every family event I made everyone, the whole of my family, dance the hokey pokey. And my dad actually found this cassette from, I think I was about 4, and I invented all those kind of songs thinking I'm in the Eurovision contest or something. And I sing they're happily and loudly. And I danced everywhere, in every possible studio at the area where I grew up. I think even the most horrible crisis I had that age is actually when my dance teacher didn't want to let me learn how to stand on my toes like a ballerina. Obviously I was too young, but I was so hurt and annoyed and offended that my mom had to make amends between me and my dance teacher. You know, that was the kind of horrible crisis I had at that age. And I was very physical. I was in the running team at school. I was practicing gymnastics, and I walked the fastest. Everyone knew Nataly walks the fastest in my family, among my friends. And then I was injured. And when I was injured, it meant that I had to put the dancing aside. And when I had to put the dancing aside, I didn't want to talk about it anymore, or to think about it, or to see it, or to go or talk to people about it. My mom said I actually had a present from a friend of hers, and she got me those 2 little ballerina shoes, and she had to throw them away because I didn't want to talk about it. My heart was broken. But I don't know if it's fate or destiny, and dance has a way to crawl back into my life. And at the hospital, actually, the bed next to me lay Tamar Borel. Borel is a dancer and a quite famous choreographer in the Israeli dance scene. And she had an accident, a car accident, around the time that I had my own accident, and she remained paralyzed, and she's still until today in the wheelchair. And I could see she was struggling. I adored her from afar. She was quite scary, and I was a little girl, but I could see she was struggling very much. But when she was released from the hospital, she continued to make work, and until today, she's quite a famous choreographer and a dancer, and she makes work in a wheelchair. And I couldn't believe that someone could do that, but I kept admiring her from afar. A few years after I was released from the hospital, I met my old dance teacher, and she told me that she just went to see Tamar perform. And I was like, wow, I couldn't believe that it's actually possible. And I wanted to know how it went. And I was really excited to hear her answer, how it was. And she said, and I would never forget that, she said, Tamar should leave the dancing for the dancers. And she even continued, she said, I don't think that what she's doing considered to be dancing. So you know what? I agreed with her. you know, the dancing, the stage is a place for those that can. And I couldn't, so it wasn't my place to be. And I just decided that, you know, I don't want to talk about it, like I said. But I don't know if some of you practicing the arts, but when you've got it, you can't just let it, it's there. It never goes away. So I asked my mum if she can enroll me to a drama class. Because in a way I can say today I was looking for a way to heal. So she was like, fine, but I had to do an audition. I was about 14 at the time, and I walked with crutches at the time. So I would never forget that day of the audition. It was a big auditorium. There was one teacher, the drama teacher, she was there. And I entered the auditorium, and I had to walk up to the stage, walking with my crutches, putting them aside, asking for a chair, because chair is one of my best friends till today. And then the whole auditorium was blacked out, and there was one light, and that light was on me. And I started my monologue, and she looked at me, and it was magic. And I just knew I'm in the right place. And it was the very first time that I enjoyed someone watching me. Because you have to remember, I was 14 and I was walking with crutches, and people didn't stop looking at me and staring at me. And it's really not that age that you want to be stared at if you're not, you know, not for the right things. Because I had doctors examining me on a weekly basis. I had physiotherapists that touched me on a daily basis. I had private investigators on behalf of the insurance companies. So I literally had to like close the windows or the curtains so no one will take pictures of me. And that was about 2 years. I had, you know, people, the community I grew up, there were no disabled people. So I had a lot of people pointing at me, especially because of my story. I had kids at school talking about me. So that was a horrible experience to feel that at that age. So on stage, I could control it. Because on stage, I can control what you see of me and how you see me. But in the outside world, I don't have control over the gaze of society. So what happened is that I started to walk like that. You know, as if to say, if I'm looking like this, then therefore, if I don't see you, you don't see me. If I don't look at you, you don't look at me. I know it's quite naive, but when you're 14, that's what you think. So I kept looking like that. But think about it. The disabled person performs on a daily basis. If we'll take, I don't know, in Israel, let's think of boarding a bus. A person in a wheelchair boarding a bus. In Israel, it means that in some buses, the driver has to stop the bus, get off the bus, take the little ramp, put it like a stage. Then the person in the wheelchair has to go on it, and then everyone in the audience looks at them, like an audience looking at an actor. So when you're 14, that's a very, very intimidating experience. And the stage became my refuge. And when I was 16, I was told by the doctors, if I don't want to continue to walk with my crutches, I don't have to. I can, but I don't have to. And that was like, wow. I put them aside and I didn't want to look at them again. And all of a sudden, I could walk down the streets and no one noticed that I've got a disability. That was amazing. I loved it. I could pass as someone that doesn't have a disability, because obviously it doesn't appear that I've got a disability when you look at me for the very first time. People at school, though, knew. And they were very supportive, I have to say. I had a special car drive taking me every day to school. Due to back pains that I had at the time, I didn't go a lot to school, but it was all approved in advance by my teacher, so that was fine. I had good grades, so everything was cool about that. I couldn't run or do many physical activities, so I was exempt from sports classes. Hey, that's great. I loved it. And also, I was exempt from high school trips. Because again, in Israel, most of the time it's to the north and it's like mountains, and then I didn't really want to sit in the bus. At the time, I really thought they were really accommodating my needs, because I kept saying I can't do it, and they were like, yes, of course, if you can, you don't have to do it. But it actually meant that I didn't do almost any activities except of studying with my peers. And in Israel, in high school, you do many social activities, and I was excluded from all of them. I didn't do any of them. Now, today I'm a teacher myself, and I'm on the other side of the spectrum, and I can't help it by wondering wasn't it just the easiest way out? I know that I didn't say anything. Like I said to you, I said I can't. But why no one actually talked to me about it and tried to fight for me? Or, you know what, how about changing the curriculum? For example, sports lessons. You know, I can't run, but I do Pilates really well. And yoga, that's sports, isn't it? I could get grades for that. Or high school trips. So for one time, they wouldn't go hiking, they will actually go to a museum. They can change the route of the trip. But I didn't want to be a burden. You know, I'm just one. And everyone, you know, 200 students and me. Why should everyone change it because of me? Why should everyone suffer because of me? So it just made much more sense to me and to the school, you know, that I'll just stay at home. And that was that. That's the way I kind of went through high school. When I turned 18, I graduated high school, and in Israel you go to the army. Again, excluded from the army, being told I won't be able to be drafted. That was fine. I was like, I want to be an actress. I don't want to go to the army. That's fine, you know. And I started phoning acting schools. The first acting school I phoned, they asked me why I didn't go to the army. So I told them, hi, my name is Nataly Zukerman. In 1990, when I was 12, had an accident, the Scout, you know, same story you've had a few times already. Why didn't you go to the army? Like I said, I explained it to them. And then was asked if I would be able to take part in movement classes. And I said, I don't think I will be able to. Then we're so sorry, we're really, really sorry, but we won't even be able to audition you. It's like, okay, that makes sense. You know, like, the perception is that an actor needs to be versatile. He needs to be able to embody different characters, different characteristics. And my Ophelia, you know, she will always limp. And I know there's one hand, the actor needs to be a comedian, but then you also have typecast. So how many characters do you know that have a limp? I know 3. Oedipus, male, can't do it. Richard III, can't do it. And Laura from, I forgot the name of the play. So, you know, 3 characters, one is female. That's not really a place for me. And also in the Israeli theater scene, I've never seen disabled performers. Especially not, maybe there were, but not those that actually show their disability. And if you ask me, even today, it hasn't really changed. Deaf characters are still being played by hearing actors. The same was disabled years ago when she tried to get in. And she did actually manage to get an audition, but she was refusing all of them. So she decided to do an experiment. And in the last one, she decided to lie. And because she limped, she said she twisted her ankle. Guess what? She got in. 2 weeks after, she was called to the head of the acting school because they realized that their problem with her leg didn't go away. And she was on probation. She got probation not because she lied. They told her that she's on probation because they're not sure there is enough space or enough room for a disabled actress in the Israeli theater scene. She actually managed to finish and she graduated and she's actually doing quite well now. But, you know, it took her quite a long time to be able to actually go and say that in the newspapers. So I got the message. And the message was, the front of the stage is not for you. You're really good, but you can be behind the scenes. Go and study directing. And I thought, that's great, actually. I'm interested in directing. And I went and studied directing in Seminar Kibbutzim College. But also when you study directing, you still have to do movement classes. You still need to do things on stage. And I didn't want to take part. And no one said, you have to. Everyone said, yes, of course. If you can't, you don't have to do it. And you know what? It was quite painful for me to watch. Because they could all do things that I couldn't, and I didn't want to take part in it. But something changed in my last year. One of my teachers asked us in part of the class that we took with him, he asked us to do, to make a presentation of ourselves, to introduce ourselves to our classmates. Now, we've been together for 3 years by that point, and I was like, what do they not know about me, you know? What can I tell them? So I decided not to find a character, but actually be myself on stage, and to perform different actions that they never saw me do before. So I chose dancing. And that was the first time I danced after 10 years on stage. And I asked people from the audience, people from my class, to come and dance with me on stage. In another segment, I exposed my back, and I asked people to color paint my scar. And while I'm doing it, and I was with my back to the audience, I could hear people crying, and people kind of being really investigated in what I was doing. And I was like, wow, they're interested. My body, my story, it's interesting. And that was, wow, an amazing moment for me. But when I thought to myself, okay, what am I going to do with it? Can I have a place for it in the Israeli theater scene? Well, the answer was no, because that was one class, one lesson in 3 years. So I was like, okay, I'll study somewhere else, and I went to study in Scotland. And I moved in 2000 to Scotland. It felt to me that was my opportunity to actually find my own independence because of my injury. My parents really sheltered me. And both of my parents studied abroad. My dad studied in UCLA, my mom studied in London. Nothing to do with the arts, but I wanted the same. And I knew that in Scotland, in Glasgow, where I studied, I'd be able to actually make work in the kind of things that I started to do in that class. So I went to study Devi Theatre and Performance Art, and it was part of we studied through a collaborative process and group work. First day, first lesson, we have to play tag. Now, like I said, I can't run. So I find myself going to my professor. Hi, my name's Nataly. In 1990, when I was 12, I had an accident, and again, telling the whole story. Now, I have to tell this story at least once a week since I was 12. So if you do the math, that's been many times that I told this story. And in every occasion like that, in the beginning of everything, I have to tell the story so everyone needs to know, otherwise something can happen to me. But what it means is that as a person who tries to pass as someone who doesn't have a disability, I have to expose it, and I have to talk about it. And then everyone always looking at me and coming and asking questions, and I don't want to talk about it. So my anxiety levels were so high that time, regardless of the fact, obviously, that was my first day in a foreign country without my support system. And I was really used to this kind of, when I tell the story, I always get that look. It goes like that. Hi, my name is, and they go, oh. Which I translate as, I'm so sorry, so sorry. And then it goes, of course, if you can sit aside, you don't have to take part. But he didn't do it. He just kept asking questions about my disability and about my injury. And then he said to me, you have to take part. Everyone in this class takes part. It's like, what does it mean? The game won't define who we are. We will define the game. We will invent new rules for the game. I didn't really understand what it meant at the time, but now I know that it meant that there are those who can take part in the game and those who can't. Everyone can. But you just have to be very creative in order to be able to include everyone. It really changed the way I look at things. Because if there was a game that I never took part because I couldn't participate, if that means that's what I did until now? All those years, there was a game and I didn't take part in it? That's a quite scary thought to feel. And was it my responsibility? Was it their responsibility? I don't really have even an answer today to those questions, but from that point onwards, I started taking movement classes. And it wasn't easy, because my professors was from the acting classes, and they were very kind of, an actor needs to have many characters, many characteristics, they need to be able to do things, and they had to really change how they think. And I'm the same. So it was but it was a combined effort. And there were many exercises that I couldn't do. But first of all, they had to adapt it. So sometimes they did. And sometimes what we realized is that when I was failing doing them, we realized that the failure is actually quite beautiful. Because I don't know, but in theater, we always have a conflict. That's what makes theater. And a conflict is about not succeeding. So all of a sudden, me and them realized that actually failing, it's quite beautiful. And there is a setting to failure. Or we can look at it even more. We can actually look at it as, instead of disability, as many abilities, just different abilities. Because when my legs shiver, no one shivers like me. Meryl Streep can't shiver like me. I have the best shivering. And all of a sudden, I realized that it's actually beautiful. And I will never forget, there was one moment when I was asked to choreograph a dance. Again, did it with a chair, my favorite friend. And I remember my tutor's face. He was like looking at me, he was so proud. And it was beautiful, the way I did it, even if it wasn't the normal dance that we were all used to. And from that day onwards, I decided I need to share this experience of being behind the scenes, of living in the disability closet. I need to be out. I need to start kind of addressing it. And I realized at that point that I never treated myself or thought of myself as having a disability. I was the girl with the limp. And that was it. And you know what? No one else treated me like that. You know, at the car drive that I told you before that I had to school, there were other disabled kids going to the same school as me. I excluded myself from them. I don't remember any of their names, even today. I was never friends of any of them. And at hospital, I wrote this diary, and I referred to myself in the diary as being almost disabled. Because the girl next to me, Liat, one of the girls, she was around my age, she was in a wheelchair. She continued to be in a wheelchair, and therefore, she's the miserable one. But I'm the one that got away. Even the patients in the hospital excluded me from it, because I started to walk and they didn't. So, you know, that's the way I grew up. Even in my family, there was a hierarchy. So being disabled, it means you're in a wheelchair and it's final. And I continued to develop. So that was the kind of atmosphere I grew up around it. And I thought that was enough. It's about time that I'll start addressing it. So when I moved back to Israel, it was the first time that I spoke to some of my friends and I said to them that I'm disabled. And they both jumped. They went, "No, you're not." And since then I had that line many, many, many times. And many of the signs that you've seen today, those are kind of signs that, the kind of things that I've been hearing a lot in my life. And I wanted to understand why. Why did I have that reaction? Why are they so scared? Why are they mad at me for saying it? So I started doing a bit of research. And I found that in this book, it's very interesting, that the world is divided into two groups of people. Those who are disabled now, and those who will be disabled in the future. Which means that we are all on the disability spectrum. And this is why we're so scared of it. Because when we see someone with disability, we know this could be us one day. You know, hip replacement, caretaker, nursing home, we're all there, you know. Even, you know, back pain, don't be able to walk down and up the stairs so easily. We're all going there. And that's why our fear of the disabled is so deep and so unsettling. And I wanted to look at it through my art, because that's the way I know how to understand the world. So I was trying to figure out when I feel disabled. And I realized that at home, I don't feel disabled at all. I won't consider myself disabled at home because the home is really accommodated to my needs. But the minute I step outside, my disability arises its head. My biggest enemy is the staircase. Any staircase. I hate staircases. It's really hard for me to walk up the stairs and I have to use a railing, otherwise I can't do it. And also going down, but actually going up, that's really, really hard for me. And I have to really concentrate to actually be able to do it. I really hate those moments when you come to a staircase and on the railing there is a sign saying fresh paint. And I'm like, oh no. And then I walk like a little child, you know, like 2 steps at a time. And then everyone looks at me. And then I feel disabled. And I imagine people saying, oh, why is she walking like a 2-year-old? Anyway, I hate that moment. So I realized that the staircase is actually one of the things that is like a barrier fence between those who can and those who can't, between those who are able and those who are disabled. I went with my partner to the aquarium here. And in the aquarium, there is a spiral. So everyone can walk together. The minute you get to a staircase, it says, people with trolleys, they have to go to the elevator, disabled people for the elevator, and the elevator is take right, and you get there. So it's not that we just not in the middle, we actually at the back of everything. This is our place. And I wanted to put it in people's face. I wanted societies to start looking at it through, again, my art. So I chose the busiest staircase I could find in every place where I went to. And I put this beautiful black dress on, and I was barefoot, and I decided to walk up like an able person does. But if I failed, I had to do and take the step again. So that meant that from a 5 minutes action, it became a durational piece of 3 hours. And I was invited to do it in Jerusalem Cinematheque, which I don't know if you know, but there's a huge staircase in the middle of the building, and it was part of a disability art festival. So, put my black dress, my beautiful, blow my hair, it's really beautiful, didn't look disabled at all, walking in the middle, and then, you know, people are walking down with me, but I'm obviously much slower than everyone else, so I became the element that interferes in the flow of the crowd. And I could hear people shouting at me, "Get off the way, get off the way." Just to remind you, we're in a disability art festival. Some people came to me and said, would you mind taking the lift? Would it be easier taking the lift? Or I had people saying, "Do you need any help?" Or people ignoring me, or people looking at me like, "What is she doing?" And at the corner of my eye, I could see this guy, and he was having his crutches on with him. And he was there for about 3 to 4 hours I did it. And at the end, he came and spoke to me. And he said to me that he has cerebral palsy. And he said, "The reaction that you got today, that's my reactions I get on a daily basis. This is my life, and I get that all the time." It was the very first time that someone that we will all describe as disabled said to me, "You and me, we're the same. We share the same experience. We share the same feeling." And that was a very, very strong moment for me. Because it was the very first time I realized I have a community. You know, and I need to stop hiding, and I need to actually say that I've got a disability and claim my rights. And that only happened when I was about 34. And then I decided that enough is enough. And I've got a name for myself in the fringe scene, at least in Israel, then it's about time to talk about it and to make a show about it. And I called it The Other Body. And it started by me wearing a beautiful black evening dress, lifting a sign over my head saying disabled. You know, the journey to actually manage to come here and talk about those things, it's not about an overcoming story. Sometimes people ask me about it. I don't feel I won or managed to do it. It's very much still something that I'm struggling with. Sometimes I like the fact that I'm part of the community, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I like to look at myself, and sometimes I don't. And it's not the easiest feeling to have, but it's an everyday struggle, but sometimes it's beautiful. And I know one thing, that even today in Israel, it's not talked enough. And especially in the theater scene, we don't have any more characters or any more disabled performers or actors. But other bodies, whatever you define other, needs to be shown on stage. And they need to be in center stage. Because we are here. We're not going anywhere. Thank you very much for listening to me today and taking part of my journey. Thank you very much.